Hello and welcome to Michi Designs. In today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to draft a basic bodice pattern, or you can call it a basic bodice block. So today I want us to take note of something, that all our measurements will be divided by 4, because this is a quarter bodice, meaning that your body measurement is divided by 4, so that when you finish drafting and you want to cut it on your fabric, you place your fabric on fold to cut 2 for the front and 2 for the back, making it the 4. That's why we're dividing the measurements by 4. So the materials we are using today are the tape rule, the marker pen, the scissors, your ruler, straight ruler, and curve rulers, and then of course the pattern paper. So today we're going to start by marking our shoulder line. From the top of the paper, we're going to come down by 1 inch to mark our shoulder line. So I'm going to mark this 1 inch on both sides of the paper and then rule a horizontal line across the top of the paper to mark our shoulder line. So that's what I'm marking right now, the horizontal line to indicate the shoulder line. That is our starting point. So after marking this shoulder line, the next measurement to mark is our vertical measurement, the measurement from the shoulder downwards. So the first one is my bust point measurement is 10.5 inches. After that is my waistline measurement, that's half length, 16 inches. After that is the hip line measurement, it's 24 inches. You can as well get your hip line measurement by adding 8 inches to your half length. As my half length is 16 inches, I added 8 inches to get it 24 inches. So I'm going to mark these same measurements on the other side of the paper so I can connect the points, the lines horizontally. So after your vertical measurements, the next is to mark your horizontal measurements, which I already marked on both sides, and then I'm connecting them right now. So after connecting my horizontal lines, the next thing to do is to mark my shoulder measurement. I'm using a shoulder measurement of 8 inches. So I'll mark it right here on the shoulder line. So after marking it, I'll come down by 1 inch on that shoulder measurement to mark my shoulder slope. The shoulder, as we know, is not straight. It's a kind of slopey. So you have to slope it down on your pattern too. After that, I will mark my neck width. I'm trying to get my neckline now. I mark my neck with a neck width of 3 inches. Then I also mark my neck depth of 3 inches. So I'm using 3 by 3 inches, but for both width and neck. For my neckline, it's a round neckline. This is actually a standard measurement. If you are a beginner, you have to use 3 inches for a start before you can increase your neckline, but you can't go less than that. So after marking my neckline, the next thing I will do right now is to mark my armhole. My armhole measurement is 8 inches. That's measurement around my arms. You can also use calculations to get it by dividing your bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5 inches to it to get your armhole measurement. So now I'm measuring that same line on the armhole, from the shoulder to the armhole on the center front. That's what I'm marking now, so that I'll connect the points. Remember, we came down by 1 inch on the shoulder line, so I'm adding that 1 inch to the 8 inches armhole. Then I'm marking that total of 9 inches on the center front. Then I'm going to rule a line across it now to form my chest line. So the chest line is actually derived from your armhole measurement. So I connect the armhole line and then I connect my shoulder slope. After that, the next thing I will do is to label appropriately my lines. That's the chest line. Then the next one is the bust point. The bust point is also called the nipple point, from your shoulder to your nipple point. So I'm labeling the waistline now. Then I'll label the hip line. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to mark my bust measurement. In order to draw my armhole curve, I have to mark my bust measurement on the chest line. My bust measurement is 37 inches divided by 4 is 9.25. So I will mark that. Once I mark that, I'll measure my armhole, which is 8 inches. Then I'll get the midpoint by dividing my tape into 2. As you can see, I folded the tape into 2 to get the midpoint, which is 4 inches. So the midpoint is 4 inches. I'll mark that. Then I'll come in by half an inch on that midpoint to get my front armhole curve. You can see, you can come in by 3/4 inch, that's 0.75, but I prefer to come in by half an inch. It works perfectly for me. Then you use your straight ruler to connect that half an inch to your shoulder slope. After that, you now use your curve ruler to connect the remaining part of the curve to your bust line, or you can call it your chest line, to get your front armhole curve. The reason you have to come in by half an inch is to enable you have free movement under your arm, once, especially if the dress has a sleeve attached to it. So it gives you that ease under the arm to move it. So after marking my armhole curve, the next measurement I'm going to take right now is my waist measurement, my waist round. My waist measurement is 32 inches. So divided by 4 give me 8 inches. I'll mark that, and then I'm going to add that to this pattern. I added 1 inch that, making it 9 inches. Then I'll go to my hip line and mark my hip measurement. My hip measurement is 42 inches divided by 4, which gives me 10.5 inches. So I'm going to mark that. After marking my hip measurement, the next thing is to connect the point from my bust measurement to the waist. Remember, I added 1 inch that on the waist line. So I added it to the measurement. Then I'll connect to my hip. So after connecting, I'll have to use a curve ruler to smoothen my edges, the sharp edges around the waist. Okay, so having done that, the last thing we need to do on this pattern is to draw out our dart line. So the dart is gotten from bust part measurement. The bust part measurement is measurement from one nipple to the other. That's nipple to nipple measurement. And my bust part measurement is 7 inches divided by 2 is 3.5 inches. Then I added half an inch to make it 4 inches. The half an inch is sewing allowance to sew the darts together. So I'm marking 4 inches, starting from the bust point to the hip line. So now I'm going to connect it with a straight line from the bust point down to the hip line. Then I'll have to take the 1 inch that I added to my waist measurement. I'll go and mark it on the waistline. I'll take half inch on both sides of the dart on the waist, and then I'll come down on the bust point by 1 inch and connect the dart to the waist. After doing that, I will go to the hip line and come up by 2 inches. I'll go up by 2 inches from the hip line and connect the dart back to the waist. As you can see me doing right now. So after doing that, that's the end of the front pattern. So the next thing is to draft our back pattern. So we'll go down by 1 inch like we did for the front pattern and draw out our shoulder line. Once we are done doing that, we'll also measure the length of the pattern, which is the hip line. The full length is at the hip line, 24 inches. We'll draw the line out. And then the back is going to have a zipper. So we'll mark 1 inch zipper allowance at the back before we start our measurement. So mark out that 1 inch zipper allowance. And then after marking that 1 inch, we're going to place our front pattern on top of the back pattern right now. We place it starting from that 1 inch zipper allowance. So you will start from the 1 inch. We will remove the zipper allowance and then place the front pattern starting from the end of that 1 inch. As you can see me, I'm taping it together, starting from the end of the 1 inch zipper allowance. We're not starting from the beginning. Please pay close attention. So once you tape it together, what you do is to mark the neckline for the back. I'm using 1 inch depth for the back neckline. The width is the same, 3 inches, same with the front. Then I'll mark my armhole from that midpoint down to the bust measurement. I'm not going in by half an inch like I did for the front. So after that, I'll just cut out my measurement because the measurements are the same, both your waist and your hips. They are the same. I'll just cut out the back armhole and the front neck, back neckline, first with the zipper allowance. So once I'm done that, I'll remove the front bodice from the back bodice. Then I'll mark my point, the waistline, the bust point like I did in the front, and I'll connect the lines. So once I'm done doing that, I'm going to draw out my back dart. Please note that the back dart does not start from the bust point like the front bodice. It starts from the chest line. You know, we came down 1 inch from the bust point for the front bodice, but for the back now, I'm going to come down from the chest line by 1 inch. Then we'll connect to the waistline. We're taking ½ inch on both sides like we did for front bodice. We'll connect it. Then same thing we did for from the hip line. We'll go up by 2 inches, then we'll connect it. And then we are done. This is the front, this is the back. So for the front, we'll cut off the armhole added there when we were trying to trace out when we placed it on the front pattern. We'll cut off the neckline for the back so that we can have our neckline for that front bodies. And then we'll have our back bodies. We'll label them appropriately. And then this is it. This is the final look. Our basic block pattern is done. So I thank you for watching this video.